What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. The New York Giants getting set to take on the Philadelphia Eagles as they look for their first sweep since 1748. No, I'm kidding, but it certainly feels that way. Jake Fromm will be making his debut start. Looked pretty good last week in the limited exposure that he got in that one drive against the Dallas Cowboys. So hopefully the New York Giants find a way to get the job done this week. Got my fingers crossed. Not going to be easy as it's a huge game for the Philadelphia Eagles. I'll be live on Bad Dogs channel at about 12:45, and then I'll be live here probably talking about this article just as much as the game itself, but I'm sure we'll be able to talk about Jake Fromm, answer some of your questions, and beat around the bush with the future of this New York Giants football team, because at this point in time, that's what we're all worried about. Going into this year, next year, it's a huge offseason for this football team. Yes, you're not going to be able to make a lot of moves in terms of the players on this team due to the fact that you're going to have a limited budget, but the Giants are going to have 2 very high draft picks and 5 picks within the first 85. So it is of my belief, at least, that you want the best possible decision maker that you can get to be making those picks for this football team. I'll talk about what this article means in terms of where they may be leaning with the next GM candidate. I think you guys already know. I've talked about what Ian Rappaport had to say, and the fact that Judge and Jones will be back. It only makes me further believe that either Judge will be handpicking the general manager candidate, or at least a big part of the selection of the GM candidate, meaning that he's had ties with him, or it'll be somebody promoted from within the staff for, I guess, an experiment to see if they could continue to push forward with Joe Judge and Daniel Jones long term as their answers at both of those positions. This coming out from Adam Schefter. New York Giants plan to bring back head coach Joe Judge and quarterback Daniel Jones for the 2022 season per sources. And we'll jump into the article in a second. Listen, I know a lot of people are going to be flipping out about Jones, and this doesn't definitively mean that Daniel Jones will be your starting quarterback next year. They're going forward with him. They could very well bring in a very competent backup that could compete with Jones, and if Jones struggles, he could end up getting the job from him. I think they definitely need to bring in a better backup for Jones's injury concerns alone. This also does not mean that the New York Giants are extending Daniel Jones on the 5th-year option. That being said, outside of trading for a guy like Russell Wilson, which I guess this article kind of hints at that they probably will not do, this may be the best decision for the Giants for 1 year at the quarterback position if they don't feel that there is a quarterback in this draft class that is worthy of picking in the top 5 or 6 overall. And to be worthy of that, I think they need to have top 5 or 6 upside. Now, maybe a quarterback in this draft will have that. Maybe the New York Giants will end up changing their mind. But at this point, if they feel that way, that may be the best option for this team, at least going into next year. Now, of course, Joe Judge, who really has no ties to Daniel Jones. He was not here when they drafted Daniel Jones. His job next year will be dependent on how much Daniel Jones can grow as a quarterback if he is, in fact, back as the starting quarterback for the New York Giants football team, and it'll be an interesting dynamic between the head coach and the quarterback going into next year. Wanted to pull up a paragraph from the article written by Schefter. Schefter, very reputable, so I'm definitely going to, at this point, be in full belief that both of these guys will be back. The Giants believe both Judge and Jones deserve the opportunity to demonstrate their talents next season. Even though New York already has been eliminated from the playoffs and has clinched a 5th consecutive season with double-digit losses. That hurts my soul reading that last part of that sentence. 5 straight years with double-digit losses. The Giants still are expected to have difficult conversations with multiple members of the organization in an attempt to diagnose all that has gone wrong in recent seasons, and Judge will be a key part of those conversations. So what does that mean? Who is he talking to? Is it the scouts? Is it the assistant GM? Who is he talking to? Judge has appointed the majority of this coaching staff. He has ties to almost all of them. One key change that the Giants have to make, I think we all agree, no matter what, should be at least, they need to bring in a new offensive coordinator. And at that point, now you're putting Daniel Jones into a 3rd different scheme. So you're asking a lot of your quarterback going into next year, having to learn a whole new playbook if you go that route. Now, maybe they will keep somebody from, with some rapport with Daniel Jones from within the staff. But either way, this is something that needs to be talked about and could be a struggle for the quarterback going into year 4 if he, in fact, is the starter. I think they need to change scouts. They need to shake things up from within inside this organization. I've come out and said over the last 3 or 4 weeks that I would fire Judge for the simple reason is I would want to bring in the best GM candidate possible. For everybody out there that wants Borgonzi, for everybody that out there that wants Ed Dodds, cross them off your list. There is no way in hell they're taking this job and being told that a head coach that has 10 wins over the last 2 years and a quarterback who has 11 wins over his first 3 years and has missed 10 games due to injury are going to be their quarterback and head coach going into their first year as the general manager. Those guys are in high demand, and they are absolutely not going to rush at the opportunity to take a job like this. Now, being fair, I never thought they were going to begin with, but this is just more of the same of John Mara forcing an agenda on a GM. The best course of action at this point being that these two guys are going to be back, probably as crazy as it may sound, is either hire an in-house guy or bring somebody in that could work with Judge. Now, if you bring somebody in that could work with Judge and Judge handpicks that GM candidate, I think that's going to give Judge more leeway. I don't think you're firing Judge after next year if he handpicks the GM candidate that came in to work with him to begin with. Is it possible that you could scrap it all up? Sure, if the season is a complete disaster, but I don't think you'd want to move on from a GM after just 1 year. Possibly if you were to just promote Kevin Abrams and you look at it kind of as a lateral move with Dave Gettleman, but at that point, just keep Gettleman. Gettleman was the guy that was responsible for bringing all these guys in to begin with. You're not really giving Kevin Abrams that fair of an opportunity. At least that's my outlook on the situation. I think, as it says in the last part of that sentence, Judge will be a key part of these conversations. The way I look at it going into next year is Joe Judge is essentially going to be the GM. At least for 1 year, or at least is going to have a ton of say in what the Giants do with those draft picks. And this is one of the biggest drafts the Giants have had in quite some time, being that they're going to have 2 selections from within the top 8, probably at the worst, and 5 picks within the top 85. So hopefully Joe Judge could get the job done. Some people that want to think optimistically could look at the last 2 drafts and say that they've liked him. I could also say that it's too early to judge these draft picks, being that if you go back to 2018, a lot of people said the same thing in 2019 about the draft class of 2018. They're no longer saying that anymore, but hopefully Joe Judge does a good job, and the GM that they bring in alongside to work with him do a good job with this. As far as Jones goes, as crazy as some may think, I think it is the right decision. I don't believe in forcing a quarterback pick in this draft class with all the needs that the New York Giants currently have on this football team. I would use this draft to bolster that offensive line, something that Joe Judge and Dave Gettleman refused to do in this year's past draft. Many sources around the league believe the Giants' big change will involve general manager Dave Gettleman, who could decide to step down after 4 seasons with the team. And I think we all know that Dave Gettleman is going to be replaced at the end of the year. The question is, who is going to replace him? I expect him to retire. I don't think the Giants will fire him, and Joe Judge is going to get even more responsibility. That's at least my opinion going forward with this football team. Listen, I'm a stability guy. I'm a guy that when they hired Judge was hoping he could be the long-term answer, and John Mara is not moving off that stance. I did, because I wanted to potentially bring in a guy like Ed Dodds or a guy like Borgonzi, a really good decision maker that could come in here in such a pivotal year, and didn't think that Judge did enough to warrant fitting a GM around him. Obviously, John Mara feels differently. They've kind of promoted Kevin Abrams throughout this entire year, having, like I said in my previous video, having him up there during press conferences with Dave Gettleman. It's possible at this point that Abrams may be the guy that steps in and gets the job. Whether or not it'll be something more than a year if things don't work out, I have no idea. That's entirely up to John Mara, and John Mara's always been a guy that likes to work with people he's comfortable with. He believes in Jones, apparently, and he certainly believes in Judge, and he wants to see, at least for another year, according to Schefter, if things can work out long-term. Next year, regardless, Judge cannot just be thinking in the short term. He has got to fix that offensive line and give Jones an opportunity to prosper as a quarterback. And if Jones is not the guy, at least give the next quarterback that you bring in a better shot to succeed. We'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. I'll be live on Bad Dogs. Hopefully you guys come on by for the live stream. And like I said, I'll be live after the game to talk about it with you guys. My opinion on the matter, you know, I would have moved on. I would have tried to bring in the best GM possible and allowed him to pick his head coach. That will not be the case. As a fan base, if this is true, what other choice do we have other than to hope that the New York Giants make the right decision? As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.